You know what that sound means? It means it's International Women's Day. So to celebrate, we don't have Tasia.
3 dudes.
3 dudes for the ladies. Hi, and welcome to Momentous Live, episode 53, where it's going to be mostly Apple most of the time because there was an event today. But first, some shocking news that it's not in the rundown. I just learned, help me, that COVID can shrink your brain and damage its tissue. I'm not sure if that's looking good for me.
Oh no.
Week 2. No, of course, not eligible for testing, so still got Schrodinger's COVID. Maybe Tasia has the same. Who knows? Anyhow, apparently the damage occurs mostly in the sensory areas, affects taste and smell. So, not that you need that to enjoy life or anything. How y'all doing otherwise? I'm Tristan Jutra.
Well, very rosy now that you've gone over the dark part of the show, hopefully.
Well, it gets darker. Who are you?
Oh, I'm William Silver.
And I'm Gray Williams, and I'm really, really concerned at this point. Just as a note, my parents are actually going to be traveling to Ireland in the next little while, and we're looking for rapid antigen tests. And so you can get these for $22 for a 2-pack. So if you wanted to check to see how you're doing, maybe one way to do it.
Don't know, don't care.
Okay, fair enough.
What you don't know can't hurt you. Put up your dukes.
Just leave it to the shrinking brain matter then. That's
exactly.
That's great.
I look forward to a lifetime, whatever's left of poor decisions. So you can find out at us at momentous.tv if we can string our words together properly. Twitter.com/momentous.tv, Facebook.com/momentous.tv, Instagram.com/momentous.tv. And on YouTube, you can go to youtube.com/TJMJutra or Google my name or YouTube my name and look for the Momentous playlist there. Let's get right into it, shall we, gentlemen?
Mm-hmm.
In your weekly...
the weekly Wordle.
Weekly Wordle. This unhinged DIY may be the most Wordle you can play in a day. So, we've talked about the duodle and the quadrille and all the... if one Wordle a day is not enough for you, you can do 2 or 4 at a time, or 8 octordle. There's 8 at a time, and now there's secordle, where you can literally play 16 games of Wordle at a time because reasons.
Problem.
Anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Exactly. Let's just beat that into the ground. Something a little bit more fun, however, is something called Hurdle. I don't know if you guys have tried this out yet. The new music game for Wordle lovers. I mean, let's just hitch our wagon to this thing, make something that rhymes with Wordle. And it's kind of fun. It's sort of like Wordle crossed with Name That Tune. But because it starts with the very, very beginning of a given song, you've got to be really on it to know what's playing. Like you get like a second and a half of like a single chord. And it's like, don't know. There's no hints as to what decade it could be from or anything like that. So, I'm a fan of music. Worked in the music business for years and years and years, and I've struck out 100% so far. At least you get 6 guesses, and it plays you a little bit more each time. So tickle a different part of the brain, whatever's left. What's that?
And that is for the 3 of us to do this each day until our next show, and take a screenshot or a screen cap, and let's see who comes out on top.
That sounds.
My money's actually on you. So
I don't know.
Probably, yeah. Second place with Will.
We'll have to see. It really depends on when the music's from, because there's a thing now called Dua Lipa, apparently, and apparently she's a singer and she has a podcast. So I mean,
and it's about to be on Apple TV.
Exactly. Just can't keep up. So
it's a little like that Elvis Presley, who was in the army but also a singer, but then also in pictures.
These polymaths. How do they do it? In other Armageddon-related news, you may know there's some stuff going on the other side of the world, and you may be wondering how to help, aside from donating to the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders, also known as MSF. But people have been finding some creative ways to donate. Some big old corporations are getting involved, such as Uber, offering free rides to people in the area, on and off in certain cities in Ukraine, because it is a little sketchy there, but around the Polish-Ukrainian border, they're offering free rides to people, and other organizations are pitching in their own way. But regular folks are also booking Airbnbs for people in Ukraine to basically send them cash directly, booking stays there and not staying there, just getting cash directly into the hands of those in the conflict zone. And similarly, people are also buying digital goods on Etsy. So with digital goods, of course, they don't need to be shipped anywhere, so that makes it a little easier on the creator there as well. So a couple of neat ways to help out folks in that part of the world in Ukraine that are under siege, quite literally, at the moment. Any other creative things you've heard or thoughts on this, guys?
Well,
I
there
really
was
like
one
this.
I was thinking of,
Mhm.
which, as you guys know, I'm part of a DJ community and a community of scratching DJs across the world. And there's been a number who have been affected by this, and some of them have band camps. I was actually just had that thought this morning based on these articles on the Airbnb. So I'm thinking, I'm researching it, of course, and I'm considering buying overspending on their Bandcamp music, just to donate some money to them. I did find out, which is a slight hitch, which is that Bandcamp takes 10 to 15%, except for first Friday of every month, where they give all to the artist, and we just missed the first Friday of the month. So that's a little bit of a. So I'm trying to decide whether I wait or whether I just do it before.
Yeah, you might end up seeing some policies change there from Bandcamp as well for artists in specific regions. Again, with any of these things, we want to make sure to do whatever. Yeah, they say DYOR, do your own research, some due diligence to make sure that you're not being taken advantage of by the inevitable cadre of shysters who are going to try and get in on some of that action. But yeah, unless you guys want to start your own Ukrainian folk band, and we can get in on that action ourselves.
Well, it's funny you mentioned fees because my barber today, her name is Magdalena. Her family is Ukrainian. And we got to talking about how they're doing, and they're doing okay. But one of the reasons was because she and the rest of her family had sent some Bitcoin over to them. And they were actually able to use that to leverage their way out of the country. So I believe they're safe in Poland right now. Don't remember if I heard that correctly, but we're actually starting to see quite a bit more in crypto where people are sending money funds directly, especially on like low-fee blockchains like Polygon. There's a lot of traffic on that.
So while some people in the world have real problems, the rest of us pay attention to what Apple's releasing. They got a whole bunch of new gadgets because Apple's gonna Apple and tech's gonna tech, and there's only so much you can do. I was surprised, however, that there was zero mention. There was, some people were playing their Apple buzzword bingo today, and there was no mention of Ukraine whatsoever there. And I'm not sure if that had to do with the nature of the global audience or what, but that was a little surprising given how committed Apple seems to be to various social justice issues.
Well, from what I understand, these are pre-recorded.
Yes. But how early? And, you think they would... Tim could whip out an iPhone and do a quick little, hey guys, sorry about the mess over there. We're doing what we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because like looking at it, is this the right place? Mm-hmm. Right? They've already made statements. I believe they've stopped sales in Russia. So it's sort of one of those like, we're about to have this like super happy fun time where we're talking about this stuff. And it would really present a counterpoint to what they're about to do. And I don't know who'd actually be seen as respectful. So that's the only thing that I would be concerned about, which is one of the reasons why I think they probably didn't do it.
I guess we should check back in our files to see how they treated other things that were in the news, past incidents and whatnot as well. Anyhow, but what is respectful? Actually, I don't know if this is respectful. They didn't mention in the 1 hour address where to buy Apple's new spring color watch bands and cases. Part of an Apple tradition. Look at all these glorious new cases, the woven ones, the fluoroelastomer ones, and of course, a whole bunch of new Hermes watch straps as well, iPhone cases, and so on and so forth. So this was not covered in the keynote. So in case you missed it, and if you're looking for something to decorate and protect your iPhone and your Apple Watch, we've got a link in the show notes for you.
Oh
How are
man,
you? How
gotta win the lottery for those Hermes watch straps. 500 bones.
woo!
Hey now.
Hey now, they should call them They should call them edition. Uh, Gray, how are you doing in the Apple Watch strap department? I know you're a fan.
So I've got quite a few like authentic Apple straps, and the braided solo loop is actually probably my favorite style of band. Unfortunately, it's $100 US, $110 Canadian, I think. So I haven't actually found a good knockoff of those yet, but the ones that I have are all genuine, and I really quite like them. That said, I believe this is a knockoff Hermes cuff, which was $15 on Amazon. I got it in brown as well, so big fan there. With this bunch, I think
The
I'd be
authorities
looking.
are on their way.
Yeah. They took me away in a pair of Hermes cuffs. The bright green braided solo loop. It looks like the ooze that transformed the Ninja Turtles. This I want. I want that very much.
That is
All
cool.
right.
How about
So
you? Anything strike your fancy?
I can't see. I mean, I'm pretty good. The problem with this, unless you have multiple Apple Watches, and I've got Series 0, the original, and a Series 6. So technically, you could wear two at once, but there's only so many watches you can wear at once, and it just seems almost a shame to have so many straps just sitting there dormant most of the time. Just like I have a whole bunch of old watches that sit there dormant most of the time as well. And in the interests of minimalism and decluttering, maybe it's time to.
I do not have that theory about DJ mixers.
Well, I will say, and I'm going to quote Ray here: the only thing that separates man from beasts is the ability to accessorize. So
Oh.
having
There you
something
go.
that matches your outfit is actually quite important to me. Hence,
Mhm.
a watch band in every shade.
Something that I guess is not important to you, Gray, is Friday Night Baseball on deck for Apple TV Plus subscribers. So if you're a subscriber to Apple TV Plus now, you're going to get 2 exclusive Major League Baseball games in Canada, US, Puerto Rico, and a number of other countries. Now, Will, you're a fan of certain types of sports ball. What kind of message do you think this sends from Apple to the world of sports, and how they may be adding value to Apple TV Plus? And do you see other leagues perhaps getting on board with this as Apple throws lots of money around?
What I'll say is this is a really interesting space because we have some players like ESPN and some others who have gone into the digital space and doing streaming leagues like NBA and things like that. But at least for the soccer slash European football version of sports ball, it is a mishmash of things depending on what country you're in. Certain leagues are their licenses are held by certain streaming services. So I may have mentioned this before, but DAZN or DAZN,
It's
as it's
DAZN.
butchered.
It's DAZN.
Yeah, it's butchered. A lot of people call it DAZN, but that's
I didn't
not
know
correct.
until you mentioned it a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like,
people
how are you
bring that
supposed to
up all
know?
the time. That's where branding went wrong. DAZN and
Can I
supposed
buy
to
a
be
vowel?
DAZN. But yeah, anyway, so DAZN, where they hold various soccer licenses like Champions League and I believe the Carabao Cup in England and the Premier League. The Premier League's actually been bought out by another streaming service named Fubo, which doesn't have much else. So now those who like Champions League and Premier League have to have 2 separate streaming services. So I'm just saying it's all over the place. It'd be great if an Apple or a Netflix or something bought up some of these sports licenses. And like I say, it actually varies depending on the country, right? So various countries have different sports leagues, or sorry, different licenses. So you might actually have DAZN having Premier League in one country but not in another. Another competitor having Premier League. So it's just all over the map. So I guess to get back to this baseball thing, if some of these big services can start going into this territory and consolidate, that would be great. In my opinion, I know some people may be against that, but I'm sick of having 4 different services plus Netflix. It adds more value to Apple Plus, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus, all those things.
I guess there's a couple of things going on here. One is that baseball apparently has one of the oldest demographics of viewership. So it's one way for Apple to try to appeal to them. And I still encounter people all the time who are confused by Apple TV Plus, because they go in and then they see all these movies and TV shows, and then they try to watch them. And it's like, oh, I've got to pay to rent or buy this stuff. Apple did a poor job, at least for the first year or two, especially on the Apple TV interface itself, to separate and explain the difference between what was formerly iTunes TV shows and movies and what's Apple TV Plus content. The thing is, and it's a shame because there's so much great Apple TV Plus content, but it's all new originals kind of stuff. They're doing the HBO play, and they're not licensing old back catalog stuff. But this is a new arrow in their quiver with licensing sports. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. No word on the quality of the streams. I would be really interested to see 4K HDR for certain sports. Like hockey would really benefit from that, especially since the puck is so small and we don't want to resort to putting a blue glow around it. But fast-moving sports, they tend to not do great in lower bandwidth situations. So if you've got a nice fat pipe, you're on a fiber connection, can you benefit from whatever they're pushing down the stream? And what are they pushing down the stream? Are they eventually going to be sending us 4K signals with HDR, so full color gamut and the like, because that would really give an edge over cable providers and heat things up for sure.
DAZN also cuts out all the time. Typically, it'll cut out 1 to 3 times while I'm watching a game on a Saturday morning, and I have to press the button again. Also, another thing is on the screen, and I'm not sure exactly, I've never heard a definitive answer to this. Numbers will appear on the screen, like in the corner or one of the corners, and it's somehow some authentication thing or something. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but do you guys know what that might be?
I would imagine if it's somebody's making a video on demand of it, like they're actually recording it and then putting it out there, they know which subscriber is actually recording it and putting it online. It's a little like the burned in titles when the Academy sends out screeners and things like that.
Gotcha.
That would make the most sense to me.
Yeah.
So,
and people do restream things like on pirate streams and stuff like that, so that might be it.
If somebody's got it going on Twitch, you can basically do a DMCA scan for the content and then take a look at the number and see who it is and then cut off their account.
Gotcha. So for those who are not familiar with the issue we're talking about, when it comes to the bandwidth and the quality of the stream coming through in a non-sports context, just take a look at any show that shows running water, so a waterfall or the ocean or anything like that, and see how quickly that gets very blocky and very ugly. That is the ultimate test of your bandwidth and the compression that's happening to try and get that detail. And many, many, many systems fail at that. So moving right along to some of the hardware announcements from today's Apple event. The new iPhone SE adds 5G, but keeps the home button. So we're basically looking at a design from 2013. So we're looking at 8.5 years now. And serving the lower end, the entry-level market, $429 US. You can get it in Starlight, Midnight, or Product Red. And Will, you had mentioned a certain longing for the home button, which this device still has, even though it's got an A15 Bionic processor and 5G, and it's also got the home button. Good guts, but old jacket.
Don't get twisted. I love my new phone. I love the Macs, but at the same time, I do miss the button. I miss the tactile touch. I mean, you still hear people talking about tactile keyboards and missing them on phones. So I just miss having the home button. But logistically, technology-wise, I get it. I want more screen. We all want more screens. It's kind of ridiculous to have a little button-sized screen if they were to put a screen on the home button. So I get why it's impractical, but my heart will go on.
Gray, who's this for?
I'd say my parents, but they actually have an iPhone 11, so they didn't buy the SE. But I think probably the next phone will be an SE. honestly, like for all the folks out there who are on Android who perhaps have had, they were looking for change, or they don't have any, they're not getting security updates. People have older iPhones who've dropped them and they're like, oh, it's time to upgrade to something. This is the iPhone for everybody else, right? You're not on the cutting edge, bleeding edge, but you are. This is the weirdest thing: is this has an A13 Bionic in it, which is the same processor in the iPhone 11, iPhone 13, and
That's
A15
an
Bionic.
A15, yeah.
Bionic. So it's the same processor in the iPhone 13. This is where I got mixed up. iPhone 13 and iPhone 13 Pro,
Yeah.
which we'll talk about it a bit more. But Apple has done this incredible thing across their entire lineup, which is they're setting a lower boundary for developers of like, okay, this is what you can design for. From this point forward, this is what's going to use this processor. And so when you're building something, it has these features. They're not using a cut rate processor. They're not taking away cores. They're not doing any of this other weird stuff that you find happening in other phones. This is literally, the same sandwich, no matter which package it's in. And so, who's this for? It's honestly for anybody that hasn't picked up an iPhone 13 yet, or iPhone 13 Pro yet.
Can I throw down another user case?
Sure.
Of course.
Is workplaces. Sometimes workplaces that buy whole fleets of phones, they'll get the light model. Basically, I know a few people who have lighter versions. It's funny though that I'm like, oh, that's so cute. That's an iPhone from like 10 years ago. It's so small. So yeah, they'll have that on top of most of these people have their own personal phones as well, but that's the work phone.
Is it bad? I'm tempted to get one as a backup.
Retro. My dad has the 2020 SE and had the iPhone 5 style SE before that. Loved them both. Appreciated the price point. Likes having the home button. You mentioned the floor for developers, Gray, from a processor point of view. I guess one of the sticking points for some developers is the screen size on here, because it is the smallest of the screens, especially since it's got the chin and the forehead in here. Next up from that, it would be the iPhone 13 mini, which is a fair bit more real estate since it's all screen basically. So that's the only thing that I can see some developers maybe being a little choked with, is just having to keep so many different screen sizes in mind. But great for, folks who don't need, the latest and greatest cutting edge, although you've got great guts in here and this phone's going to last you 5 years. Great for emerging markets where they're looking for a low price point. Models like this seem to be doing pretty well in India, and I think some have even been in the last couple of years been manufactured there. So Apple has done this amazing job of covering so many different price points while selling the 13. I think they still sell the 12 and the 11, and they've got they're replacing the SE now, and not to mention the aftermarket, where there's still so many eights float, 10s, 10s, and even 8s floating around that they're still perfectly serviceable and receiving software updates. So so what's old is new again. And speaking of which, another device that was refreshed. Again, the line has been around for a while. Had a big refresh 18 months ago or so. The iPad Air had an overhaul to make it look like the iPad Pro, and now it's just like the iPad Pro. It now has the M1 processor and a 5G option if you want to add cellular for this. Now I believe both you and Will got iPads Pro last year. Now, when you see the capabilities that they've added to the Air here, do you feel like you're being overserved with your Pros, and that you may have been just as happy with something like the Air? Gray, let's start with you.
No, I mean, for me, it was actually getting the last year out of it. So, I use the pencil, I use the high-speed internet. I use all the features that I've had with it, so I'm not really feeling overserved. Like when I get into something, I'm expecting this. I'm expecting Apple to come back a year later and sell to everybody else what it sold to me at a premium. I'm comfortable with that. Well,
as they push the the features down the line like they do with the iPhone and the Macs ultimately. How about you, Will? I mean, you've got pretty beefy hardware there. Do you feel like you're getting the most out of it, or would something like the Air, maybe today's Air anyway, maybe have served your needs?
No, I'm with Gray on this. I mean, I'm often with Gray on things, but I'm definitely with Gray on this one. I mean, if you don't expect a new model to come out, then you don't understand, technology. I think we were even aware of this when it came out that they were holding back on the Mac, the iPad Air. So I'm not shocked by this, and it's just kicking the can down the road. And as Gray said, there's capabilities in the full featured, regular iPad. So I don't feel bad for what I have.
Well, you shouldn't feel bad because the iPad Pro is an amazing machine. They've One of the other features they added to the Air is they upgraded the selfie camera to 12 megapixels and ultra wide lens with center stage. So again, so what is exciting about when they do something like this is then it puts upward pressure on to the iPad Pro. And it's like, let's just see what they're going to put on the iPad Pro now. Yeah. And this is something that, who was it? Was it Steve Jobs that like maybe 15 years ago said something to the effect of how the way that Apple looks at their individual products is that they all have to justify their own existence. And if one starts, encroaching on the territory of another, then it's up to the other to push back, basically, and they all have to fight to survive in their own ways. No, not in a siloed corporate sort of way, because they have a basically unified bottom line. They're a functional organization and not a departmental organization, but it's still interesting to see, like, they're not afraid of having, even the iPad, when they update the iPad mini, well, it eats into the Air, and then the Air eats into the Pro, and then the Pro eats into the MacBook territory as well. So it's cool because it pushes it all forward, and they're kind of competing with themselves, let alone what else is happening in the industry. And Samsung seems to have finally woken up in their tablet space, as well, as we talked about a few weeks ago with the Galaxy Tab 8 and the Tab 8 Ultra, which have been getting some pretty decent reviews all around over on the Android side of things. I myself have been, I use the iPad for pretty casual use, mostly social media type stuff, some consumption, and some scheduling of posts and things like that. But I'm not using it for hardcore creative. So for the longest time, I was using Stephanie's old iPad Air 2 until just recently. And I had gotten her the latest iPad mini, the iPad mini 6 for her birthday. And then I inherited her iPad mini 5, I believe, which had the screen had gotten smashed. So I got that replaced on it. And it's been great. I've got it in a little clam case mini keyboard. So it's a very small keyboard on an iPad mini, but it does the job. But it's like, I still would like one of these new iPad Airs or iPad Pros. So it's just like, I just don't know if it would really be worth it. Maybe I should be saving my pennies for one of the other devices we'll be talking about in just a moment.
I also like, just one last point. It's in some ways, when you look at Apple products, and I know that and we're going to talk about one, but they come out with new products that are a new section, or they develop new things. I always think about it a little bit like Porsche. Porsche has made the 911 since the 60s, and you can see the lineage going backwards, right? And it's just tweaking every year. No one buys a 911 and goes, oh man, they're going to come out with a 911 next year that's going to be better. It's like, you got a Porsche. So I don't know. It's just like, they're not reinventing the wheel all the time. You're seeing the tweak, the iterating. They're iterating a good product and making it better when new technology comes out, and they're constantly working on making a better Porsche.
But with that 911, how many years of software updates will it get? We joke, but that's a thing with Teslas and other new cars nowadays, is that kind of support, because there's so much software now. And we know that software in cars, especially for the infotainment systems, tends to be a lot of hot garbage, especially once it's a couple of years old.
Mine's going in for service this week because when I was on my way home on Saturday, when it stopped at the light, the auto stop start kicked in, so it stops at the light. When it turned back on, there was a clunk, and the power steering was gone.
Uh-oh.
So you go through the process, right? You pull over to the side of the road, you turn it off, turn it back on again, power steering's back. I drive at the next light, auto stop, clunk. So there's clearly a bit of an issue here somewhere. It doesn't sound like it's mechanical. It sounds like there is a software issue. The other flag that popped up was, at the same time, it was also saying that it could no longer reach the flat tire monitor, which is really it's a key part of the power steering. Mm-hmm. So once again, BMW strikes with their BMW iDrive, and kill me now.
At least your vision didn't go out when you were walking in the subway. I joke,
This
but
time,
it's
right?
That's the world of AR coming soon. So maybe you should try and upgrade your car with a new M1 Ultra desktop processor, Gray, because that's what's coming to a Mac near you soon. The M1 gets an even more powerful variant. So, about a year and a half ago, we had the M1 arrive, the first of Apple Silicon to arrive in the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro laptops. And then last spring, we had it in the 24-inch iMac, the entry level iMac. And then last fall, we had variants of the M1, the M1 Pro and the M1 Max, kicking things up a notch, right, Will? And our favorite marketing parlance. And I believe all my momentous co-hosts here ended up going for an M1 Max variant of the MacBook Pro. So no envy here. But maybe I should just up the ante and go for an M1 Ultra powered Mac. And we'll talk about what Macs the M1 Ultra is going to be in soon. But Greg, can you tell us about what they did here? There was some speculation about the M1 Max a few months ago, particularly a feature at the one edge of the die that almost looked like you could plug it into something else.
Mm-hmm. And so looking at that, you can see on the M1 Max, there is essentially what is now half of the interconnect. And so this interprocessor connection basically is melding these two together. And this is kind of the difference that between most multiprocessor machines and where the M1 Ultra is now, is looking at this, the system sees this as one M1 Ultra processor, not two Core I whatever chips where it has to address them individually. It's addressing one chip, which has all of these cores. And so this is a massive jump forward in technology. Like there's nobody else doing this right now or doing it well. There's 2.5 terabytes of bandwidth, 2.5 terabytes per second of bandwidth. So like trying to think of how you would saturate that, I just don't know right now.
And with the onboard memory, the hybrid memory for both regular RAM and graphics RAM, they're looking at about 800 gigabytes a second of memory speed, which is like, how many 8K streams do you need to edit at once or be able to scrub through to saturate that? Because they're always talking about 8K streams. So
and all of it's being done in real time when you're looking at these streams. Like it's absolutely incredible. I mean, 128 gigabytes of unified memory, up to 64 GPU cores. Like it's funny because my M1 Max that I have here and my 3080 are kind of like they're neck and neck. And one was a $2,000 video card and one was a $4,500 laptop, but there was also $2,000 worth of computer put on top of it with my PC. Looking at this thing it's fast. It's really, really fast.
Well, it does have Ultra Fusion architecture.
You've got to love the branding. Like, what else are you going to call it? And this is the thing. Like, when you look at how GPUs used to plug together, like there was Crossfire, and I think one of them had like SLI, Scanline Interleave. I don't know what it was, but like branding this, what was it? Ultra Magnus.
Yeah. So when. Like just the natural ascension, they're going to max this out when they go Ultra Max Pro. Like when they do the Ultra Max Pro chip, they can't do anything more after that.
We're finished. Just shut it down.
Yeah.
Well, there was some speculation that this sort of dual chip fusion was going to be called the M1 Max Duo or something like that, and that there was going to be a Quadro or a Quadra, almost echoes of past Mac models from the early 90s there. But maybe this is just a first step. Maybe we're going to see 4 of these stuck together somehow when it comes to the Mac Pro, which is the last piece of the M1 puzzle for them to update. So I think the proof will be in the pudding on how the M1 powered Macs perform in real world benchmarks to see how this is actually scaling compared to the competitors in the marketplace. Because a lot of folks like to talk about their Threadrippers, whatever those are, but I hear it a lot. On the Intel and AMD side. So
That's a big beefy AMD processor. But
yeah.
yes, yeah.
Well, it just sounds beefy. It's ripping threads all over the place.
Which is what a seamstress does, or a tailor
Exactly.
does.
That's one of the most macho things I can think of. So,
Yeah.
Gray, why don't you tell us what kind of Mac the M1 Ultra is going to appear in first?
So, I mean, this goes back, what, 15 years? You and I, when we first met at Future Shop, we were both working. You were working in marketing. I was working in e-commerce. You were working for Chalk Media. I was contracted. And we were talking about the headless Mac, the X Mac, at the time people wanted an upgradable tower that you could put all your own components in, which was never, ever going to happen. But we were looking for the thing that sat between the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro or the Mac Pro, where it didn't come with a monitor, didn't come with a bunch of the other bells and whistles, but this was going to be the raw processing machine that would let us have a desktop Mac where we could supply our own screen. And the dream was dead for the longest time. And so now we
have such a niche, right? And Apple was still much smaller when it came to the desktop computer market.
But now we have a gift, to everyone who has a side hustle or this is their primary hustle, and they do creative work. They do work that requires that heavy duty processing that right now, they bought an iMac Pro because they needed it, but it wasn't really what they needed. $24.99 Canadian, and this is the Mac Studio, and it is absolutely beautiful, milled out of a single block of aluminium with all
Johnny
of the ports
you
could want, because it's got 3 USB-C, 1 Thunderbolt 4. This thing is absolutely ridiculous, and it comes with either the M1 Max or the M1 Ultra. For them to put their top-of-the-line processor in a Mac Mini on steroids, and not charge, $24.99 sounds very, very expensive. But you got to remember, this is going to be as fast as a laptop that I just paid $4,500 for without the screen, without the battery. This thing is awesome.
Will, would a beast like this tempt you away from a laptop for some of your creative endeavors? So you don't have to move it around, plug it in, unplug, just have something there all the time with the raw horsepower, and you've got your keyboard, mouse, and one or more monitors plugged into it. Just go to town, not having to worry about the constraints of a laptop and all the cooling and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I'm somewhat late to laptops. I had desktops for years, just because for me it was the power per pound, right? It was the amount of bang that you got for your buck for a desktop, and you could, like with PCs, put separate monitors, and you could carry those over from one machine to another. You didn't need to buy a new monitor when you bought a new desktop or a new keyboard. So I like the idea of this a lot. I do like the flexibility of having a laptop and being able to go down and watch TV or sports and just do some work with something mindless in the background. But if I get more for the same or for less, my computer at home does not necessarily need to go on the road. I have a computer at work. I have a laptop at work. If I really needed to work on the go, I could probably take that, unless it was maybe a personal project. But I see a lot of use case for this. But maybe I'm just one of the weirdos that doesn't mind being anchored to one spot in the house.
No, I have to admit, I really like the idea of this. A couple of years ago, I was even entertaining the notion of picking up an old cheese grater Mac Pro before the new ones were introduced, or even one of the trash can Mac Pros, just to max out to have as a desktop machine. I ended up getting a secondhand iMac as a desktop, and then, as I've told you before, ended up getting just the thinnest, lightest Mac Portable I could, which was the M1 MacBook Air, which has been wonderful. So I really enjoying the best of both worlds. Although now it's managing multiple machines and all of the stuff that entails. Moving away from my previous 25 years of only mostly just having a single laptop and then moving that around. But I just got sick of plugging and unplugging. And as I age, I get more and more lazy as time goes on. But I have to admit, I'd even been looking more recently at an M1 iMac, sorry, an M1 Mac Mini for just a permanent, streaming setup and the like. This Mac Studio might be overkill for that. I think this is really more of a sit down and create sort of device. Again, managing all those 8K streams and so on. But now, Gray, could you see anyone using this sort of device, despite the fact that it doesn't have built-in monitors, but using it on the road for creative endeavors, for performance, whether it's DJing or lighting or what have you? Because with a laptop, you're limited by the size of the screen, and this way you don't have to worry about the built-in screen. You've got you can just plug in whatever bigger screens you got, especially if you're at a mixing desk or something like that. Do you see any potential there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I look at this right now, my setup is I've got a 34-inch monitor sitting right here, and I've got my 16-inch MacBook Pro over on this side, and it's kind of wasted space, right? And then running this thing in clamshell mode also feels like wasting the screen. So I think there are a lot of folks out there like me who would have a home studio where you would plug this in, and having multiple monitors as opposed to multiple monitors and laptop screen would be, probably a beneficial thing for them. Taking this on the road, it's not that big. It's not that heavy. And when you think about it this way, we're starting to get into a place where you could be carrying a 55-inch screen in a, small satchel because you're looking at things like AR and VR glasses that could go well with this. You've kind of mentioned it a little bit there, like performance. I could see somebody, if you were doing like a high-end lighting rig, if you were, working with like real-time sound reproduction, stuff like that, maybe. I could see video editors possibly doing it if you were going to be going somewhere and editing for a long period of time. When we used to go down to CES, guys like Nigel and Paul, editors that we used to work with, would bring down, their computers. And those Mac Pros were big and challenging to deal with. When they brought laptops, they weren't quite powerful enough. So something like this, they could pop into your suitcase. You set up an edit suite for a week. Even if you go and, you ship your monitor down, it's still going to be a better experience than the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So yeah, I can absolutely see people using this. It seems like a reasonable thing to do.
Well, I know until the latest round of M1 MacBook Pros came out, certain developers like Marco Arment, the developer of the podcast app Overcast and the co-host of the Accidental Tech podcast, ATP, when he would go to his summer place, he was one of the original developers of Tumblr. So I think he's doing okay money wise, but he used to bring his iMac Pro with him to the summer cabin, basically, because he didn't have a laptop that could do the kinds of things he needed to do and perform the way he needed it to perform. Again, until the M1 device laptops started coming out, and now he doesn't have to do that anymore. And there were other people, again, who had cases for iMacs and iMac Pros to carry around just because they were larger and had the better heat dissipation for those Intel processors. Because when people were putting i7s and especially i9s in them, yeah, they get pretty warm. So as you both know, the laptops, the MacBook Pros with i7s and i9s, just had a number of issues, so much heat, so much fan noise, even logic board failures. So the M1 has been a blessing in so many ways, and that's just like the Apple Silicon just keeps going from strength to strength here, and to be able to power something like this this Mac Studio is in some cases like faster than the Mac Pro, than the 28 core Mac Pro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's just it's a total game changer. So who knows when an M1 Max and M1 Ultra powered Mac Pro comes out, how many cores they're going to have in it. And again, that's going to be where we see how well this architecture actually scales. So I think the best is yet to come. So to go along with your shiny new Mac Studio, you might want a new screen, a new monitor that maybe doesn't cost $5,000 US. I think $6,000 Canadian for the Studio. Was at the Apple Display XDR or whatever it was called. I mean, it was huge, and the stand alone was $1,000. But now we have some of the goodness from that design language, and we don't get the micro LED, or we don't get the mini LED backlighting, unfortunately. But get what you get. You get an option for a stand that goes up and down, tilt as well as tilting. So that's only an extra $500 American, but at least it's not $1,000, and it doesn't have the magnetics aspect of the Pro stand. But this is what a lot of people have been asking for a long time: a proper 27-inch 5K monitor to pair with one's Mac Mini, now Mac Studio, and even to one's MacBook Pro or MacBook Air. It's still not cheap. Greg, can you give us the rundown on this?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, phenomenal little display. Like this is great. 27-inch, and obviously we're losing a 27-inch device today, so say so.
We'll get to that in a minute. Don't even get me started.
But they've done a lot of really great things here, right? This is a 5K display. It's got 3 USB-C ports. It's got 1 Thunderbolt port, so it'll charge your MacBook Pro. They'll said it'll even fast charge the 14-inch MacBook Pro, which I think is great for those of us with the 16. It'll charge at regular speed, which is that half hour to 50% rate. You need 110 watts on the charger to do that with the MacBook Pro 16. The built-in camera in the screen, this is something that we haven't seen for a very, very long time. And that reminds me back of the old iSight. Remember the iSight cameras, the barrel-shaped thing? This actually feels great to have in here, because for so many people, when you bought a Mac Mini, I guess when you're buying a Mac Studio, you don't have that beautiful FaceTime camera that's built in. So now they've got this ultra-wide camera with center stage in there, which makes me wonder if they're going to bring center stage to the MacBook Pro.
Right. The next revision, get you to upgrade again.
Well, and I mean, clearly, I think this is being done in software, because I think there is a wide-angle camera on here. I could be wrong about that, but it would be disappointing to not have this feature come to the machines that we have, but such is life.
Get used to disappointment as an Apple user.
Right. I mean, they've got a phenomenal speaker system in here. They've got 2 woofers and a great tweeter system, and it does the same spatial audio that you're seeing from their other displays as well. So this is the one that I think a lot of us have been waiting for. The only challenge that I'm finding right now, and I don't quite know, because I keep hearing that it is not ProMotion. It's only 60 hertz.
Correct.
And that might actually give me pause on this, because I've got a 4K 60 hertz display in front of me right now, and it's fine. But once you go to ProMotion on your other devices, it's kind of hard to go back.
Yeah. I would say one of my nitpicks here, I think if anyone was deluding themselves, or if anyone that was thinking that they were going to get a $500 or even a $700 monitor from Apple to fill this game, I mean, they were kidding themselves. But Apple has a way of being able to charge more by adding in certain premium features, like the sound system on here, like the webcam. And the part that breaks my heart a little bit is that, in the sense, if you have a multi-monitor setup like a lot of us do now, it's kind of redundant. Like, do you really need 3 webcams and 3 sets of speakers and all that? Unless you're doing live switching on Twitch or something like that. But it's like, it would be nice if there was something that had the same visual aspects and fidelity, and didn't have that other stuff. Maybe you have one that's got the speakers and the webcam, and then two just dumb monitors on either side for that kind of setup, because you're paying more than you need to for features you don't need all 3.
So there were reports that there were multiple Apple monitors that were coming today, and then last week they said only one is ready to go. So if I had to put good money on this, June this year, during WWDC, they will roll out the multi-monitor setup that I think we're all kind of waiting for, because I'm in the same place. If I had a triple display setup here, vertical, horizontal, the center one would have the camera, just like this does. And that's kind of what I want to go for. So I think you're right. I think they know as well. And I think we've got it coming.
Yeah, and they'll probably say, hey guys, we got a sweet solution for you. Some ultrafine displays from LG with some crappy cases. But LG's they make great panels. It's just everything about them was terrible. So mixed. I mean, very nice. Probably, I still find it difficult to pay more than $300 or $400 for an external monitor. Yeah. So, oh boy, maybe we'll see how that crypto does. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely filling a gap. There's a need there, and I think Apple has a knack of pricing things just a bit more than people expected, but not so much more that they won't go ahead and buy it anyway. People of a certain class anyway, the developer class, the creative class, and so on. They'll be like, oh, it's more than I wanted to pay, but dang, that's nice. So they done it again. But Apple giveth and Apple taketh away. And we learned today that, not mentioned in the announcements, the 27-inch iMac has apparently been discontinued. And I guess they would justify it in saying, well, we've got the Mac Studio now, and you've got this 27-inch beautiful monitor that you guys have been wanting for so long. What do you need? Well, how about something that's a similar price? I don't want to have to pay more, because the Apple Studio and the beautiful new monitor is going to be more than the equivalent iMac was. So they've got the 24-inch M1 iMac, which is great entry level. Gray, do you think they're going to replace the 27-inch, or is it gone for good?
Oh, they will. Yeah, they absolutely will. And I think they're probably going to wait until the next generation M series processor. Reason for being, like, when we're looking at keeping those thermals in line, I think you're probably going to see something a little bit more akin, where they'll probably put like an M1 Pro in the 27. So you'll have your M1, M1 Pro, and then M1 Max will be in the Apple Studio, or the Mac Studio and the Mac Pro. So again, I don't know if this one is a June thing, or if maybe it's a back to school thing. But I
One of those rare July, August announcements. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that this year. Otherwise, it's probably going to be next spring, and we'll see it back then.
Yeah, because first they canceled or discontinued the iMac Pro a while back, and which was 27-inch as well. And yeah, so fingers crossed. I really like my 27-inch iMac, flanked by its two 27-inch LG monitors. But the Studio could be just replace that middle monitor with one of these guys, or maybe another $400 one, and we'll see. It's just the 27-inch iMac has been around for so long. It's like 20. Was it? I guess it was 2011, 2012.
2011, yeah. I had one from 2011.
So we'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed. And the iMac Pro may be gone for good. But in the announcement today, they said they've only got one spot to fill, and that's the Mac Pro. I mean, so they could say, well, we already filled the iMac gap last year, and a 27-inch iMac is just like gravy. But the language, just one to go. The Mac Pro, we'll see. Well, you're not interested in iMac anyway, are you?
No.
All right, that's what I figured. So this is what the lineup currently looks like for those who are paying attention at home. We've got the M1 Mac Mini, these US dollars, at $699. The Mac Studio, the M1 Max version, starting at $1999 US. And Gray, you said that's about 2,500 Canadian that they're selling for?
Yeah.
And look at this huge jump, double to get to the Mac Studio with the M1 Ultra. That is a big jump there. And then the Mac Pro, again, Intel Xeon-based Mac Pro, currently $59.99. So I expect the new M1 Max or M1 Ultra-based Mac Pros will start up and around that kind of range too. But it seems like there's a gap here that could be between the $19.99 and the $39.99 that could be filled in by an iMac potentially. Apple's generally pretty good about having a pretty smooth price curve. There's another gap here between the Mac Mini and the Mac Studio, but they didn't really include the M1 iMac in here, and that's where that would go. But this is like the biggest gap between the Mac Studio M1 Max version and the Mac Studio M1 Ultra version, and these names are making me crazy. But we'll see as they continue to fill those gaps.
There is actually something, I think, in the gap there, because I think you can order the M1 Max with additional graphics cores. Yeah, you can. So
yes.
Yeah.
I mean, right now you've got the 10 CPU and 24 GPU cores. Those are kind of the binned versions, and you can up those. And I think definitely you want to up those a little bit. I think the 32 gigs of RAM is fine, especially with the Apple Silicon architecture. The 512 gigs of storage is a little insulting, frankly. I think they should have started a terabyte there. But
to be honest, I don't think so. The way that I look at it is that storage on board can be a liability, especially if your data is on there. Like run your OS and run your apps there. You've got so much bandwidth to go to an external drive. Your data should be on an external, right? Like this is a workhorse machine.
Yeah.
Like, let it run the system operating software, keep your data on a separate.
When you do that, however, you start adding little bits of complexity to how your file system is organized, and fragility should there be, something accidentally get unplugged. I'm speaking from experience at the moment because I'm currently running my OS off an external drive on my iMac because the internal had a was
That's
it a
kind of the
Fusion?
opposite of what.
Yeah, it has a
But
Fusion drive at the moment, and so I'm running the OS off of an SSD externally, and every day until such the warranty is expired now, so I'm going to like crack it open and replace the internal drive with a fast SSD because I'm bad at money. So, rather than just save for a new machine. Anyhow, let's move on to some picks of the week. Unless either of you have any. And you need a cigarette after this. Will, any final thoughts on the Apple event before we move on to our picks of the week?
No, I mean, I think this is a good, solid, like mid-event, mid-year event, or whatever you want to call it, because the big event is usually in the fall. So I think there was some good products that were released and a bunch of things people were waiting for. So I mean, I think for this event, this was a pretty good one.
Nothing on your shopping list, though, right? You kind of did you did
No.
most of your shopping last year.
I did all my shopping last
phone,
year for
iPad, and MacBook Pro. How
I
about you?
don't buy stuff every year, so it's going to be another 5 to 10 years before.
See, you got to like space things that alternate, so you can like get a little bit of juice each year, rather than doing 3 things in one year and then having to wait, right? So, how about you, Gray? Anything on your list from this batch?
If there was a reason for me to have that Mac Studio in my life, I would.
Right.
There isn't.
Yeah, that too.
So, I'll wait until such time, or I just won't have one.
Next time around for me.
Next time around. All right, Will, your pick of the week.
Yeah,
back on the Theranos train.
Yeah, I think I mentioned this as one of my most anticipated things this year. We watched the first 3 episodes. I thought it was pretty good. I mean, for someone who has watched, read, and consumed a lot of things about this case and thought about it and talked to people about it. I mean, yeah, it's a dramatization, so you have to kind of get over that. Some of the things are zhuzhed and made more consumable for television. But I think it's actually a very interesting look, and it did sort of fill in some gaps for me or connect some things. It's like, oh yeah, I did know that, but I hadn't realized was connected to this. So I think there is some interesting things to glean from this. It's also, there's an entertainment value here as well, and it's well acted and well produced. So I think it's definitely worth watching. Some very good actors in here. So I recommend it. But I mean, you have to be I've bought in. I'm interested in this story and the impacts it has on technology and Silicon Valley and entrepreneurship. So I find this story very interesting.
So this is The Dropout, and it's starring Amanda Seyfried as Elizabeth Holmes, the founder and CEO of Theranos, which had also all sorts of legal issues because they had blood testing technology using just a drop of blood that didn't actually work. So we've talked about that in the past with regards to the various podcasts and documentaries that you filled us in on that, Will. So glad to see that you're finally getting a chance to watch a miniseries on this topic. And so it's on Hulu in the States and Disney Plus here in Canada?
Yes. Yeah, we watched it on Disney Plus.
Gotcha. Great. You got a pick of the week for us?
I do. Star Trek Picard. Back,
I thought you might do that. You might do that. Nice. I purposely did not pick that this week because I thought you might go there. How about that premiere?
Me as well.
Really fun. Really interesting. It's kind of interesting to see, when topics get into the zeitgeist. Right now, the idea of alternate histories and, playing with time and memory. Destiny 2 is doing that right now as well. So watching this felt very familiar in a strange way. John Delancey, great to see him back. So don't want to see much more, but yeah, really.
It's too bad
really
they kind of spoiled it in the poster because I luckily I'd kind of forgotten about it, but but at the end there's like, oh, there's an old friend.
Yep. And I mean, Whoopi Goldberg, phenomenal. Just great to see her again. So.
And her operating her bar at 10
Forward Avenue.
Yeah, Forward Avenue. Amazing. Amazing. So lots of details, lots of fan service there. But I thought, like, for those who have been a little let's say, frustrated by some of the unevenness in the various Star Trek series over the last few years, even including the first season of Picard. They had definitely mixed reviews. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely a different animal. This one, I think, really delivered in a way that that some people who have been skeptical or a little disappointed may come back into the fold if they can keep it up. It's that trick, that balancing act of the fan service versus an engaging story, and also still feeling like Star Trek ultimately.
Yeah, exactly.
Will, did you manage to catch the premiere?
I did. I enjoyed it. I enjoy a lot of these Star Trek offerings. The one thing that sort of niggles me on some of it, and especially first season of Picard had this problem, is that it's a dark future. And that's the thing that bothers me just a teeny bit because of the vision that Roddenberry had. I enjoy this. I think it's very good. I'm looking forward to watching more. And it's modernized to a certain extent. And you can't necessarily put the old Star Trek and make it now because it was a different time. But that's the one thing that often bothers me about some of the, not all of the modern Treks, but just a few of them. But I think season 1 of Picard, that was my biggest thing that bothered me, was just some of the darkness. But I mean, everyone has their own opinion on this. I'm still watching it. I'm still enjoying it. But that's my one niggle in the back of my head.
Now we're going to go back in time. So great. We got to let you go. Will and I can wrap up because we've got a couple of projects from him and Tasia to share, and I'll just give you a sneak peek as you're exiting the door. My pick of the week is Severance on Apple TV Plus, which I'll tell Will a little bit about.
We'll talk about it soon.
Catch you later, Gray.
See you later, buddy.
All right. Well,
just the two of us.
Just the two of us. Do you subscribe to Apple TV Plus currently?
I do.
Or you?
Well, I have the free trial
free trial. Year. All right. So my pick of the week is Severance. I think we talked about the trailer when it came out, and I got to admit, the first few episodes that I've seen so far I've quite enjoyed. So just imagine that you go to work for a company, and if you want to work in a special department, all they have to do is insert a little implant into your skull, which maybe interferes with your corpus callosum, or not really your corpus callosum, but just interferes with your brain in such a way that when you go to the stairs or elevator back and forth, you forget your other life. So when you're at work, you don't know anything about your home life. And when you're at home, you don't know anything about your work life. And that's ostensibly for security purposes. But of course, there's some sort of dark secret that we start to learn about. Exactly. Again, fantastic cast. A little bit dark. It's almost like an extended episode of Black Mirror or Twilight Zone. But I'm pretty hooked so far. I think we're 3 episodes in. So have you caught any of it so far, Will?
No, I haven't. I mean, I've been kind of bogged down in various other shows at the moment, but it's on my list.
All right. Well, highly recommended. Get on it while you still got that free trial.
Yep.
Okay, and you've got a project for us this week. Why don't you tell us about that?
I do. So I have another looper coming out. It's level up 11. So I've passed the big 1-0. Yeah,
solidly in the double digits now.
Solidly in the double digits. I think this is maybe my 18th looper, solo looper altogether. I've had a few theme loopers.
I appreciate the Space Invaders.
Yes, I had someone message me privately and go, "Dude, you're nuts! You're releasing these at a manic pace." I don't necessarily realize that. I really do have an obsession with making beats. I probably make anywhere from 3 to 10 beats a night, a day.
Wow.
Yeah, I've really got a problem. But it's like photography. I make a lot and then I just release a few of them, the ones that I think are especially good. So, yeah, I'm actually really happy with this one. It seems to get a lot of traction, and yeah, I downloaded today on Table Beats or Tableist.net. The link actually will probably be in the show notes, I assume. This is actually to a web-based looper as well. So Tableist.net also has web loopers.
I look forward to checking it out. Just learned about it today from you, but I always check out your beats, and I
Oh,
use
thank you.
the Table Beats app, and in the app available for iPhone, and is it on Android yet?
It is, although some people don't love the Android app as much as the Apple app.
So in the app, you can basically hit the library button and then do a search for the keyword Molotov, Molotov, and that's how you can find all of the beats that Will has released solo and is also collaborated on with some other beat masters.
Mm.
You can see it cranking out the beats.
Cranking them out.
Speaking of cranking things out, Tasia actually has 2 videos because I forgot to mention one of them last week, and she wasn't here to, represent.
Correct you.
So she has 2 videos you can check out. Chrome updates 2022. What's new in Google Chrome? Especially if you're a Google Chrome web browser user. And then she also did an overview of the best to-do list apps for 2022. So you can find those at youtube.com/Tasia Custodi, and all her work, including her once in a while podcast called Talk Techie to Me, and that is at TasiaCustodi.com. And you can learn more about Momentous, momentous.tv, twitter.com/momentoustv, facebook.com/momentoustv, instagram.com/momentous.tv. On YouTube, search for my name and find Momentous playlists there. I'm Tristan Jutra. William Silver, thanks so much as always.
Thank you.
And thank you. And I look forward to being fully healthy soon.
That would be awesome. I want you to be fully healthy too, bud.
And we hope that Tasia is fully healthy soon as well. We miss her. And
We do.
Will and everyone else, Tasia, Gray, who had to jet a little early, we hope your week is truly momentous.